Very interesting topic today. We're going to be discussing God of the gaps, right? Now, this is something very common. Normally when Muslims or anyone for that matter presents an argument for the existence of God or tries to explain a particular phenomena or something via God, generally the atheists jump on that particular person and say, look, God of the gaps, right? So let's break down what God of the gaps is and really try to explain, when it's justified to actually use that and when it isn't, basically.
Sure. What I'd firstly like to just explain is what God of the gaps is. What God of the gaps, actually, if you go into the sort of history of it, is basically when people didn't have a scientific explanation for many things around us. They made up all sorts of superstitious beliefs, and sometimes they said this is an act of God. So for example, they didn't understand why there was earthquakes, so they said there must be a some sort of demon in the earth or some sort of god in the earth that is shaking the earth around. So why is it that we have thunder? They didn't understand about electrons and neutrons and electricity or any of these things, and they just said, oh, it must be Thor, it must be some sort of lightning god and this sort of thing. So God of the gaps essentially is when people didn't have understanding of how the world works. They essentially said, aha, I know, this particular demon or this particular god or this particular ghost or whatever, this superstitious thing did it, right? So that is the God of the gaps, and as you can see, in many ways it is justified because a lot of people in history did do this.
Okay, agreed. So that is what God of the gaps is. So what isn't God of the gaps?
Yeah, that's very good. When is it not justified to
when is
use
it not justified to use that?
What I would say is there's many religions, many people around the world who've done this previously in history, that they haven't understood something scientifically, they haven't understood it naturalistically, so they said therefore it must be God. I would say that this doesn't apply to Islam, because in Islam we go where the science goes, right? We follow, we believe that the world and all of its processes and all of these things, they should be explored. We don't shut down our reason. Quran many times tells us to reflect, to think, to ponder. So for example, in the Quran, it mentions the water cycle. It mentions about the water, clouds, all these sort of things, rains coming down, right? Now we understand the water cycle scientifically. We understand that there's evaporation, it goes up, forms clouds, comes down, rains, and you have the cycle, right? So we understand the how of it,
that's
right?
the key point.
The how of it, right? And what we attribute that, in the Quran it says that God sends down the rain. So there's two explanations in the Quran. There is the how and there is the why. Two separate explanations, and they're not mutually exclusive, meaning they don't conflict with each other. So we as Muslims, we would believe in the natural processes around us. We would believe that science can explain these processes, but at the same time, a explanation of why these processes exist, the why, we would attribute to the creator. So just because we can understand how it works, it doesn't mean that we've understood why it exists in the first place. So the God of the gaps fallacy, it does apply to other superstitious beliefs and other religions. When it comes to Muslims and Islam, it doesn't, because there's a conflation of how and why.
So let's just elaborate this point. Let's take an example, okay, just to illustrate the point. Now let's take the example of the origins of the universe. Origins of the universe. Now, the universe began to exist. We won't go into that, which we can safely say this was the case. Now, let's take it from this. Now, as Muslims, we would say that the best inference, the best explanation is that God, an uncaused cause, brought the universe into existence, which is a finite creation. Now, if an atheist comes at this point and he says, God of the gaps, how would you show that this isn't the case, basically?
Well, I would say God of the gaps is when we stop using our reason and we say, this is a big scientific or philosophical problem, God did it. That would be God of the gaps. This isn't that. What we're actually doing is we're looking at the beginning of the universe or whatever it is that we're looking at, and from there we're making a rational inference. We're actually thinking about it and thinking, what is the best explanation? And in the case of the universe having a beginning, and like we've discussed in other shows, you can't have an infinite regress, there must be a first uncaused cause. So we're actually using our mind to come to the conclusion that this uncaused cause is the creator.
Yes.
We're not doing that thing of we don't know, therefore God.
And then just to emphasize the point, we're saying that this uncaused cause is the creator because we can know certain things. For example, the universe has immense amounts of power in it. When you split an atom, you know what happens. So this cause must be powerful. This cause must have a will because it chose to bring into existence a finite effect.
And also the fact that we have this universe with a vast amount of information, right? And it shows you that the creator has enormous amount of knowledge because, I mean, just a simple thing, one cell of the human body has more information than all of the books in the British Library.
Sure.
Right? And if you were walking on the beach and it said Imran was here on the beach, you'd automatically infer from that somebody wrote this.
Best explanation, right?
The best explanation.
You wouldn't say that it just the waves sort of came in a certain way and wrote the name there, right? The best explanation, someone was there and he wrote it.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the typical things that some atheists may say is when you mention anything to do with biology, they say, "Oh, evolution. Evolution explains life."
Yes.
That's it. At best, I mean, this is at best, if someone was to accept Darwinian evolution in its absolute form, at best, it explains the how. It doesn't explain the why.
Yes.
So when I mean, I've had this many times when I say to someone, "Do you believe in God?"
Yeah.
They automatically either reply, "I believe in science," or they reply, "I believe in evolution." That's actually the wrong sort of answer you're giving, because in a way I'm asking you a question and you're not answering the question. You're giving an answer to a question I didn't ask.
Yes.
Right? Just because you believe in evolution or you believe in scientific explanations for everything doesn't mean that you can't believe in a creator anymore, because these is again the how and the why.
Yes. I think that clarifies that particular point very, very clearly. Jazakallah khair once again for coming. Assalamu alaikum.